Yes. Hello, and welcome to the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for marketing, advertising, public relations, and digital communications specialists. I'm here today interviewing David Berkowitz, my friend and also a colleague. David's the founder of the Serial Marketer Consultancy, where he spends his time generating demand for growth mode B2B startups and agencies. He's the founder and also director of the 2,000 member serial marketers community, of which I am a member. His prior roles, he has a quite stellar uh, community background. His prior roles include marketing for video production marketplace Story Hunter, leading strategy at social listening firm Sysomos, serving as CMO of publicist agency MRI, where there was some pretty wonderful campaigns, co-founding the emerging media division of Dentsu's agency 360i. He's also the author of the wonderful book, Berkey's Marketing English, which we'll talk about later. He advises clients like Dedicated AI, Lucidity, Oz Content, the Shorty Awards, Entrepreneurs Roundtable Accelerator, and the Numa Accelerator. David has contributed more than 600 columns to outlets like Advertising Age, Media Post, VentureBeat, Adweek, and so many more. And he's spoken at, get this, more than 350 events globally. Hi, David. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time today. So here's what I'd like to know. What was your first job in your life?
Well, my first job really was camp counselor. I'd say yeah, that's what I did that for 8 summers. It's like that and babysitter. So all that went hand in hand.
So how did your first job contribute to your career success?
Well, I mean, I learned so much from that because being a camp counselor was the most tiring job I've had.
Oh, really?
I mean, the one version of that in the education space that was an extreme an extreme version of that was when I was in college in my senior year. I spent a semester working with this unit for autistic children and severely autistic children. I couldn't do that for more than a semester. I don't know how people dedicate their lives to this.
Very difficult.
I mean, it's so challenging, just the amount of repetition and rigor you need to really make that kind of treatment stick. It's incredible. But so much of it was, I remember getting trained as a counselor in training when I was a CIT, and the director of the program, Jack Gruenberg, I can still picture those initial meetings and what he would do, and like the camp director, Julie Rockowitz would talk about quite a bit there in Westchester County in New York, is so much of it was talking to people on their level. And I'm even saying people here intentionally because most of my constituents were 5-year-olds. So this is the group I had to talk to. But even little things that make a big deal, that when talking to someone who's half your height, get down and talk to them at eye level, right? Like crouch down and have that conversation, because if you're towering over them versus actually talking eye to eye, it makes a really big difference. Another one of those things that Jack would talk about was don't feed them soggy chips. It's crazy how much of this I retained, by the way. Like 30 years later, I'm telling you almost verbatim what was going on in those CIT meetings. But all of this that I'm sure I can still do better, they figured out so much, and so so all this I do keep drawing from, and especially when the weather gets warm and I'm like walking through Madison Square Park, I can smell summer again, especially in days when I wouldn't have a face mask blocking me from smelling everything. Then this does come back to me.
Well, that's so interesting. I mean, I remember my first jobs too, and they were dog walking and and babysitting, and you do learn things from then, especially about not arguing with your boss. But that's a whole nother topic. So, how long did it take you to ramp up the serial marketers community to 2,000 members?
It's been 2.5 years, and while it's funny to talk to some people where some people like that happens so quickly, and for me it's been very slow because I see every member coming in. I see those days early on where people aren't really posting much, where there isn't much going on, where yeah, that where early on, would this still be a thing a day from now, a week from now, a month from now? I wasn't sure. I remember it wasn't that. I could talk to you about meetings from 30 years ago. I can tell you what was happening 2 years ago when I didn't know if this had that staying power. Bringing some good people together. You were one of the first members, so thank you. And so it was clearly resonating enough with some of the right people who I was thrilled to have there. But communities are tough, and most don't last. Most don't last as long as this one has, especially with an active member base. And so I take nothing for granted.
Well, David, it seems like you are always available to members and everywhere else. I mean, I see you on Twitter, I see you on LinkedIn, but I know that if there's a question in the community, you're right there. How do you stay so organized? I know you're homeschooling your daughter. I mean, you're serving clients. How do you organize a typical day, or is there such thing as a typical day?
Well, I appreciate it. The other side of it is I see all the areas where it goes wrong. I see where some of those channels, the channel name stays bold because I haven't checked it in 3 days, and so yeah, being my own worst critic here. It's tough. I have a lot of systems of increasing complexity because my whole realm of consulting and community and content, which is how I tend to sum up what I'm doing, and not including the family obligations and anything else that's outside of that professional realm. It yeah, it can feel fairly chaotic, but there are some things where it's also, I'm just so thankful to have these opportunities. I'm so thankful that when I was just talking to a someone who I don't believe is part of the community, someone I'm connected to on LinkedIn, who was the CMO of a TV network, and now he's doing some consulting these days. And he was on. I met him through. He was on a panel of mine, and he's the father of someone else I used to work with. So I had something touch points, but. I'm just so excited to be able to go and bounce around ideas with people like this. That one of my biggest challenges to what you're talking about is that prioritization and making sure enough of my time is spent either on paid work or things that can lead to that, because I could spend every hour of the day just talking to people I want to catch up with, and good things often come out of that. But yeah, that's not going to let me move anything forward either.
Well, you have your hands in a lot of pies, or I don't think that's the correct combination of words there, but you have so many things going on, and you're adding new things all the time. And I wonder if you have any tips for us about staying organized, or if there are any tools that you use that help you to be as organized as you seem to be. I understand the feeling of chaos. I often experience it, but you seem more than anybody I know to be organized enough to do all these things.
there are tools, and then there are features, and then there are areas where I know the stuff that isn't getting done. Um, what one of the simplest features that I use all the time is boomeranging emails back into my inbox. And so if you reach out to me and say, David, we should do a show together, and then I write you back and say, okay, so when are you free? Say you're someone who wasn't prioritizing it. You were clearly on top of this. There was someone I was dealing with who a friend of mine made an intro to two of her colleagues because they wanted me to potentially help with an agency training program. And I followed up right away. Well, then, and they didn't respond right away. I boomerang that email back into my inbox for a week later, so I didn't need to look at it. Well, then I responded to them a second time. They didn't get back to me. Actually today, I wrote them a third time, and then I was thinking, okay, maybe I'll then write my, because this is also, I don't always necessarily persist this much, but this is a project I'd love to explore doing. And so I was actually thinking this morning, okay, I'm going to try them once more. If I don't hear back, then in a couple of days, I'll ask my friend if I should do anything else or if she knows what happened there. But little things like that, that just making sure it's top of mind. And sometimes the TV exec who I was just talking to you about, we ended with one of those, like, let's keep in touch things.
I
It's
hate that.
so easy for that to go nowhere.
Yeah.
I am going to send a note to myself saying, reach out to him 2 months from now, maybe a month from now, maybe two. Like, it's definitely not urgent. And so then come, the middle of April, he's going to get a note from me saying, hey, what have you been up to? Those projects have been really interesting. And it's just a little simple thing like that where, but at least then I also know that it takes up zero space in my brain between now and April.
Boomerang is a program?
Well, it's actually the send. Well, there's the send later piece of it, but then there's it's just like this little clock button in Gmail for any message thread. I mean, given how often I use it, it's funny I'm blanking on the exact name of the button because there is that send it later for delayed delivery, which I'll sometimes use, but it's just that resurfaces those. So Boomerang used to be a side program, like there was one you had to pay for, or there are other things like that. Now it's just built into Gmail, and I use it many times a day.
Oh, I have to go look. So what are your plans for growing the community in the future?
Well, there's so much I want to do with this community, and talking right now, this has been a blistering pace, but it's also been building and releasing things that have been in the works for a while. Like there was a community member, Peggy Ann Sauls, who's just a prolific content producer, and so I met her at D-Mexico in Germany in September 2019. The community was just over a year old at that point. And when I met her in the press room for an hour, I went back to my hotel room that night and I created a whole roadmap for the community. I created the first version of my media kit. All of this, Peggy's just one of those, like, it just number of ideas per minute. She has so much going on there, and she was so inspiring, and so there was so much of that I finally put down on paper that it's like, okay, I really want to build a member database. I really want to do some of these other projects. Along the way, I found someone through a freelancer site called FreeUp, kind of like Upwork and Fiverr, but then I found someone who was helping me on the tech front, and when I needed some bigger some bigger asks there, she said, oh, connect with my friend Alistair, who then started working with me as my web developer. She's in the Philippines, so she was able to do things at a price point that I could stomach for some of these side projects. And now, as of the start of the year, I have her on retainer, so she is just round the clock building things for me. And so when I have these ideas, then it's just like, okay, Alistair, what can you do with this? And so she built the private member database. She one of the first things that she created, which has been helping all these others, is setting a way for you to log in either as a regular member or access some features just as a premium member. Making it easier to segment the audience that way. I just launched a product recommendation site, marketerfaves.com, that I'm like very much in early stages of getting out there, but that was based on a spreadsheet I'd been creating for years. And then and I had one of those ideas in more. Sorry, wait. So I had one of these ideas for a long time of trying to turn this product recommendation site into a full-on site. And I said, wait a second, just hit me. What if there was a way that only members could vote on these products? And so there was a way to essentially already vet the people who are participating in this. And so all of this is just like, how do I just keep releasing things? How do I keep adding value? And then seeing what are the things that are really going to stick, what's going to make people excited about it. But then the day-to-day is so much, it's just member driven, it's conversations, it's people who are saying like that. I mean, I'm on calls with people all the time who say they know someone who's looking for a job or a gig, or ideally, they know someone who's trying to hire folks, they're trying to expand their knowledge somewhere. And so almost all of the member growth right now is word of mouth by existing members.
So I was going to ask you whether you're all by yourself or whether you have any employees. So you have Alice there doing the web development stuff. Otherwise, are you doing this all by yourself?
Another key person is Gosia Mitros. So she's in Poland, and she's just been terrific. She's my newsletter editor, and so she's been pulling together the community news. I went from every other week to weekly because there was just too much going on. I can tell you, I checked my Slack analytics this morning, and there were 1,100 messages sent in the community last week. Now, 75% of those were over direct message. So that means that you and I have no idea what most of that is like. But that also means that there were about 250 or 300 messages that were actually available to everyone, right? So Gosia has been incredible with that, and she recently started helping me organize my other public newsletter that I put out. And there are and there's some people who've helped me on a one-off basis, just setting up some of the marketing automation. So Alistair's friend Jonica was like, she was a huge catalyst for me in automating some of these tasks that would. I've also discovered that a lot of the tasks for community management, they actually take very little time to do, but they take a lot of mental energy. So if I know I'm always going to have to spend just the 5 minutes a day doing X, Y, and Z, then it's taking up way more than those 5 minutes a day. And that's why even like Gosia with her editorial work, it's not a ton of it's not a ton of hours that goes into what she does. But it's that dedication and focus, and yes, she does it faster and better than I could do it. So,
Well, that's
yeah.
the thing we're always trying to explain to our clients, like, yeah, this may not take a long time, but it took 30 years to get here. And, it takes a huge amount of expertise, and the energy that you put out is formidable. So I wonder, have you had investors in the community, or are you seeking investors, or is this all self-funded?
It's self-funded. What happened when I started rolling out the premium membership last summer was that just trying this out and putting together enough of an offering where I believe it got to the point where there was some real value in doing so. But still not, this was still more of like a small business price point, not an enterprise price point here. And so still something that I don't dismiss any expense for anyone right now, but at least something that's in that like $10 to $15 a month kind of bucket that is not one of these like high-end purchases. and with that, there was enough traction that at least not everything I was doing had to come fully out of pocket, right? I could take that and invest it back in the community. And the hard costs, even like even with the freelancers I'm working with and staff that's helping, it's still fairly modest, and most people are surprised, even though I was talking to another community organizer, and like their investment, they need, these sponsors spending 5 figures with them to be able to justify this. Like, you know, I,
You'll
I
get there.
yeah, and I'm able to keep things in check. So at some point, I've thought back of mine, should I try to pursue investment? Should I try to do that even as a way to justify spending more of my own hours on the community development side? But yeah, as of now, it's all well for a long time it was entirely self-funded. Now members are funding some of this as well, and so I've had a couple of sponsors here and there. Talkwalker recently, phenomenal sponsor, and so even for relatively small campaigns like that, they add up and just help validate what I'm doing and keep this moving.
So you've had some pretty stellar roles in agencies, and I wondered what motivated you to start your own consultancy.
Well, a reorg at Publicis, that didn't help. So being forced into fending for yourself, that is a big part of it. And so I'll, I love people with 1 or 5 or 50-year plans. I am really not one of those people, or not someone who's particularly good at it. And and I first came up with a name for my consulting work based on speaking at an event, because I was on my way out of Publicis. I called the folks at iMedia and said, you wanted me there, but you wanted me affiliated as the CMO of MRY. When I get to your event, I'm not going to be the CMO of MRY anymore. First of all, do you still want me there? And they were very gracious and said, yes, please come. Then but then I said, well, wait, what am I going to put on my name badge? Uh, and the company name, which also I can thank the great Aaron Strout for my whole business name. I still probably owe him royalties on this, because
Aaron Straub of Upstream.
no, Aaron Strout, the CMO of W2O Group.
Oh, okay.
So Aaron had introduced me on the blog for HubSpout's Inbound conference in 2015, and they had this wonderful idea. I wish other organizers would steal. I need to steal this for some of my own things, of having speakers introduce other speakers on the conference blog, and so it was terrific. And so Aaron did I can't remember what the rest of what he said was, but the line he used as the title of that blog post was "Serial Marketer, Not Killer." And that was the first time I'd ever identified with the serial marketer name. And so when I needed a name for that iMedia conference, there were a couple other finalists, but serial marketer is it. And the fact that it would be this twisted joke, and even a reminder to me not to take myself so seriously, that
That's so important. So tell
was it.
me the type of services that you provide to clients.
So one of the things that I worked on a lot over 2020 in having, I've had some terrific clients, but absolutely had an erratic year, and had things that did not go quite as planned, and working with some that weren't quite long-term clients, nor should they have been. And so I was trying to spend a lot of time, how do I make some of what I do business-wise repeatable, and working and that led to this demand generation program designed for B2B businesses. So starting to pick more of a lane as far as who I'm working with. And they're typically either tech startups right around seed Series A, or agencies before they have much of a marketing org in place, or when they're looking to reevaluate what they're doing and make some changes there. And so it's this process of looking looking at and creating personas, looking at their positioning, their targeting, looking at any of their public and even direct to prospect customer touch points, and so coming up with a very detailed and a detailed evaluation for everything they're doing, which all of so all of the scoring, all of the output for what I'm doing is templatized now. So I can tell someone exactly every last thing that we're going to look for over the next couple of months. But of course, all of the recommendations, all the analysis is 100% custom. I wound up working with some terrific strategists. There's a fantastic strategist in Montenegro, Giovanna, who has been helping me in a huge way in building this out. And so I found her through Upwork. And so that's more the repeatable program that I wind up doing, this demand gen plan. But I also do some work like there's an agency I've been helping with getting their own thought leadership in order. There are some clients that I work with. I've had a great relationship over the past year with Vesterly, a personalized, a content personalization engine and so there's some marketing consulting there, but very heavily on the business development side, and just introducing them to some of the right channel partners and brands and others that could be valuable targets. So those are some of the main areas.
Well, you certainly seem to know everybody, so introducing people is definitely a skill I know you bring to the table. So tell us about Berkey's Marketing English. I want to know what inspired you to write it, but just to quote a little snippet, this is one of my favorites. Digital tracking beacons that are practically opioids for advertisers. That's the beginning of your definition of cookies. You said it's a travesty that such a glorious name is used for such a malign technology. Cookies, when prepared correctly, are among the most delicious of humanity's inventions. What inspired you to write this book? And it's illustrated with the most wonderful illustrations. She's reminiscent of Edward Gorey in the illustrations.
She is one of my favorite collaborators. Talk about Isabella Flores de Mora, and hopefully I'm pronouncing her name well enough. But I mean, talk about a find of finds, and also through Upwork. So Berkey's Marketing English, it was one of those things where it started with I was just writing something. I think this just came up in a newsletter, and maybe not even that. And so I started writing something about impressions, and I was almost like doing this Seinfeld-esque riff, where it's like, it's funny how impressions actually rarely make an impression on anyone, you know. And so I started collecting some of these ideas, and then when I'd start to actually look at something like cookies, well, I do actually have a batch of freshly made Nestle Toll House cookies on my counter right now, where I will be gorging on them after this call.
Oh,
And
that's not
so,
fair.
so I was writing what I know very well when I get to plug Nestle in a book like this. And so it just started okay, like I had 10 or 15 of these that I collected, and then that became a newsletter, and then said, well, I've just got to keep going. And I loved the idea of trying to illustrate this somehow. And Isabella brought such ideas and vision, and so Isabella she's like college. She's very, very young for someone who's illustrating like this, and but she has such an old soul to her.
Good.
And so as I was writing this, and there was a little bit of this kind of stodginess and that came out of it, and there was just a natural voice that evolved for what became like writing, and writing in encyclopedia, a very strange thing to start, but Isabella got it right away, and her illustrations were so good, and a bit of this like gothic and steampunk vibe, and she
They're
was
wonderful.
like into it, that it made me so excited to just keep writing more. And this was her first time laying this all out as a book, and so it became this just really fun collaboration. And within a few months, we were able to release this as an ebook. I mean, I do have physical copies because I put it through Barnes and Noble, and so I've got a few hardcover books of this as well, and you can even buy it there. But it was seriously one of those things where it was just like the idea was too much fun for me not to pursue, and I have no clue where the time came from to write it. Like I don't know exactly how it happened, but I had to make it happen.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You did it in your spare time, right? So, tell us, what do you make a point of reading every single day? I always ask this of people because it's always a different answer.
So there are a few things that I I have to scan, like the New York Times headlines. I need to read that. There's only so much that I need to, I think of all the things that I've stopped reading over time, like most of the ad and marketing trades, where I feel like the best of it gets surfaced in social media. I need to go, and I I need to scan Twitter on a daily basis. There are a handful of newsletters I really like. Protocol is good for some context and in the tech world, but I but I for and then there are a lot of individuals who write usually on a weekly basis, who I just find so helpful in providing added context out there. But it's more about the people and their individual perspectives. Uh,
Can you
and
name
and
a couple?
The markup is really good. Casey Newton, his work on the role of social networks and in society. Uh, he's so smart. There's some favorites that you know very well. So Anne Hanley, every other week. I mean,
Wonderful
she's
newsletter.
brilliant. I always read Heidi Cohen's work every week, and so Actionable Marketing Guide, and so some of these people who I'm very fortunate to call old friends in the industry, then yeah, it's great actually getting to learn from them. But then yeah, I can hear their voice coming through so clearly. And by the way, Heidi is the one who, through one of her newsletters, not through all of the very you know personal advice that she's given me over the years, but one of Heidi's newsletters convinced me to take my newsletter weekly and to have more rigor in writing this. And it was Heidi who was talking about the how many Sunday newsletters, she must have included Anne's in this roundup, that she enjoyed reading. And because Heidi was saying you need to train people to expect something, and I had actually called my newsletter the serially sporadic because I had no clue when I get to publish it. So Heidi convinced me go weekly, and because she said that all these newsletters are coming out on Sunday, then I picked the opposite. And what's the opposite of a day of the week? I don't know, but I went with Wednesday, and I've published that way ever since. Also, I love the option of keeping weekends open. I work way too much on weekends, but I love the idea that if I don't want to do something on a Saturday or Sunday, I don't have to. And so at least a Wednesday newsletter means that okay, like Tuesday night is probably going to be my really long night.
So I think Heidi's been doing that newsletter every week for 20 years.
Mhm.
I mean, she's the most consistent person on the planet, in
Y-
that regard. It's
Yeah,
really
well, it's
incredible.
been a great person to learn from.
So what is the most striking change in marketing that you've seen in your career? Are you able to define something about that?
Well, there the biggest change in marketing that I mean, I remember there was one day when I was at 360i and we had a management offsite and we're down in Atlanta, and normally I'm not as vocal in rooms like this, and especially in a board meeting type scenario, I'm not typically the squeakiest wheel, but I had some inroad, and I think because these management offsites were coming right after South by Southwest for a number of years, that I would fly directly from Austin to Atlanta for them, and I was so spent that people would just see this other side. Like this is what Berkey sounds like when he has no sleep and no filter, and so something a little bit more, I might not have even had a chance to shower or shave, and then I'm like diving right into these meetings, and and there was one. It was 2009, maybe 2010, and and I got up there and said, so what are we really doing about mobile? I, I clearly wasn't the first to say this in a meeting like this. The iPhone had already been out in 2007. I proposed the mobile marketing programs, but I was talking to the management team at the agency, and we'd already by then started to really get a handle on social. 360 I'd become one of the biggest social marketing agencies at the time, and had tremendous track record there. But
Especially that Super Bowl thing.
well, the Super Bowl helped bolster the reputation. It's
Tell
uh,
everybody what that was.
so that one Oreo tweet, the lights went out at Super. At this point, I should even know offhand which year this was, but I
I
was
think it
still
was
there. So,
2003, but I'm not sure.
well, it was like 2012, 2013, something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so the lights went out. It was a big moment. So all of Twitter's going crazy. What's happening at the Super Bowl? And so Oreo came out with this perfect visual and this quick tweet that said, "You can still dunk in the dark." And and not only was it just like the perfect thing to say at the speed they did it with one of those war room tweets, but also some of 360i's secret sauce was the PR engine behind everything they did, so that they made sure that BuzzFeed was all over it. They made sure, which is almost, at least at the time, was almost unheard of, that a client from Oreo would actually comment about this on the record, on the fly. You know how long it usually takes to get a client to
Oh my
talk
God,
about
at that point it was impossible.
anything ever. And so then 360 I was able to be part of the story, but it was especially because the client went on the record so that there could be a story to begin with. It wasn't just covering a tweet. Like the making of story was happening right away. So anyway, it just a amazing moment there that I got to work a bit on Oreo. I take zero credit for that event. I was actually at an iMedia conference the night of that Super Bowl. I remember it very clearly, and so, but I'd said to the room there back at that managing, like, what are we going to do about mobile? Like I said, at some point, internet usage is going to be mobile, mobile first. Like the majority of it will be coming through mobile devices, and it's going to start with things like news, sports, and weather, and then it's going to go to everything else. And I said, I don't know if that's going to be 3 years from now, if it's going to be 5 years from now, if it's going to take longer, but that switch is gonna flip. And so if we want to not only just have a thriving practice that is mobile ready, mobile first, but if we just want to stay relevant, say it was 2010, if we still want to be here in 2013, like we need to get our act together on this. And so that kind of change, and something like that wasn't, while for social we could create a social marketing practice and have a gifted team of community managers and social strategists and influencer marketers and researchers who are all part of that, incredible. But for mobile, it had to be part of every single person's job. That was, you can't just outsource this to the mobile person.
Right.
That was a pretty big shift.
And so I wonder, like, what did you study in college?
Psych, psychology undergrad. So yeah.
So if somebody's thinking about a career in marketing now, which is so much more complicated to enter into these days because there are so many marketers, if someone is thinking about that, a young person thinking about entering the marketing, what would you recommend to them to study, and then kind of how to, position themselves to actually get a job?
Well, depending on the day, I might first say run like hell. I had a wonderful conversation recently with Thomas Kolster, who runs Goodvertising, and so he called in from Denmark to one of the serial marketers' video chats, and and it was one of the more uplifting talks that we've had, because he was talking about how marketers are increasingly able to steer companies to be a force for good, and not just some version of greenwashing or lip service, but to actually direct these ships to go and have more of a positive impact on the world. Still, that was a recent enough conversation that I'm feeling more upbeat about it. What I do tell, I'm very active with the Binghamton University Marketing Collective, and just joined a virtual career fair that they had in January. What I talk to students about is to take advantage of all of the learning opportunities. Maybe it's your show. Maybe it's Heidi's newsletter. Whatever. If you're into Twitter, follow folks on Twitter. If LinkedIn is more your thing, don't send a million friend requests, but follow people there who you find interesting. Follow agency CEOs, follow CMOs, just follow people who are in the weeds, whose careers excite you. Interact with them if you have something to say. Like their stuff if you're motivated to do that. So look for communities, look for other people to connect with, where you can be part of that. And then and also so there's that kind of access that younger folks have that people just didn't have, right? I didn't have this when I was coming out of school. This wasn't available then. And people like you and I are, there are enough of us out there who are accessible. If someone comes and asks you a question, odds are you're going to, and if someone says, I was reading your blog, I was watching your show, so how'd you get into that? And what do you recommend? Like, you're probably going to actually give them something really useful to go with. Like that would have taken Herculean effort
You could say that
when
again.
we were coming out of school. So,
Yeah.
so do that, but then also, like, just try to learn by doing somehow. Like, how little cost there is in buying a domain and setting up a website, in creating a Twitter or Instagram or TikTok account. This stuff doesn't have to be so public. It doesn't have to be about work. I talked to some student who was a guitar fanatic and had a wonderful Instagram account about guitars. Well, now I can have a very detailed conversation with him about the Instagram mechanics. I can ask him questions about, how do you prioritize putting up posts versus stories? Have you ever done IG Live? Like, I can learn from some 19-year-old kid because they're promoting some like neighbor's guitar business, So now all of this, it just enables them to engage in a much deeper level, even if they don't have the work experience that one thinks is going to necessarily put them over the top. So just make the most of what you have.
Well, and you have to start somewhere. So I just have
Exactly.
one more, well, two more questions. What do you do when you're not working?
So when I'm not working, well, I mean, family is a big part of it. So so spending as much time as I can with my daughter, and fortunately, she and I share some of those interests. So, like the Toll House cookies I mentioned, she says she wants to be a chef, uh, uh, and this is terrific for me because she and I both like to cook and bake and eat a ton. So that helps quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I love reading as much as I can, which has slowed down somewhat during the pandemic, uh, but making some time for that is always great. And I miss being able to travel. I miss being able to get on a plane anywhere. So hope to have more of that later in the year or whenever it's safe to do so.
Whenever. So when was the last time you were surprised?
Well, when's the last time I was surprised? Well, yeah, having a daughter who just turned 7, I am surprised just about every hour of the day. And there was actually something. One of the Super Bowl ads last night, and I'm going to butcher the line because it just kind of came up on the fly. But there was a line in one of these like more high and mighty ads, and it was saying something like sometimes like sometimes life changes you, and then my daughter like is narrating along with the TV, and sometimes you change a life, right?
She
Like
said that?
so but along with the narrative that she picked up that inversion that was coming, and there was this bit of formula, and I said to her, I said, "Wait, you haven't seen this commercial before, have you?" I mean, she doesn't watch commercial TV at all, and she goes, "No," and she's just smiling at me, and I said, "You just knew that was coming, didn't you?" So that is one of those things where having a little person around a lot means I know her pretty well. One of the two people who knows her best, that's for sure. But I mean, she surprises me like every hour of the day.
That's wonderful news. So I will tell people how to get in touch with you in the blog post that goes with the interview. You're active on every channel. People should
Not TikTok.
definitely, pardon?
Don't TikTok me, please. I'm terrible.
I'm getting there. But everybody should have a look at the Serial Marketers Slack because it's a really wonderful community. And I thank you so much, David, for the time that you took today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much, BL. Appreciate having me.
Okay, now all I have to do is make this stop. Okay, stop. Okay, here we go. I said stop.